Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to support this channel, the additional bonus live streams twice a month, be able to read all my comic books online for free. You can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to receive a free digital sketchbook, get blog posts once a month showing work in progress animated GIFs and more behind the scenes, just thoughts on my creative process, you can sign up for my monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Or you can pick up my current series, Morning Star, which tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. This book contains the first half, issues 1 through 4, plus additional bonus features. And I promise you, Volume 2 is coming soon. I'm still working on some formatting issues. I've already uploaded it to Amazon once. There's some things that I have to move around and adjust, but I really hope to have it out sometime in the next week or two. And if you been purchasing the original issues, for those who have caught me at comic conventions over the years, there's still copies left of the final issue, issue 8. Got a few copies of issue 6, 7, and 8 still left out there. So you get those at my main website, jeremy.net. All right. So let's see. Byron is already in the chat. Good morning, Byron. How you doing? We're just going to pick up right where we left off last week with me working on sketches for this Medusa piece. For the most part, between this week and last week, I've been working on figure drawing studies from the class that I'm taking. So I haven't made much progress here. Although I will tell you, the class that I'm taking, it's with Carl Ganas, and it's on heads, hands, and feet. And I've been drawing a lot of heads, so hopefully I'll make some progress here. And the biggest issue that I'm having is that I'm just not happy with the couple of rough sketches of heads that I've done for this piece. And I said, all right, well, let's just take it back to square one here and just try and get, I'm just trying to get the look and that feel, the attitude that the head has in this initial sketch. It's a little too small there. There's something about the angle of her head in this pose that just works for me in a way that every time I've sketched it afterwards, just feels like I wasn't getting it. So Byron, are you working on anything creative lately? Any pieces of art? Any comic works? I'm thinking about I've been playing it pretty close to the vest. I'm still not ready to announce what my next comic book project is yet, but I've been rethinking about how to write it. And instead of writing it out, I mean, I still want to kind of write out the whole series before I start drawing anything. But the approach I'm considering taking is that of trying to write like each 8 pages, even if it's going to be even if the whole thing is going to be like single comic book issues that are like 24 pages, to try and write each 8-page section as its own little short story. And I don't know how well that's going to come off. Until I try it, but it sounds kind of interesting to me to just try and make it like these little bite-sized segments. So I think what I might try doing is running it as a web comic on Instagram. Post it first on Patreon, let the Patreon subscribers get that first. Then maybe a week later it goes up on Instagram, and serialize it that way before maybe collecting it maybe for a Kickstarter campaign. Let's see. Jay King's in the chat. Says, what's good? What's good? It's all good here. Just hanging out, continuing work on this piece. I'm drawing pretty light here, so let me know if this is difficult for you guys to see. I can make it a little bit darker, but I like to sketch pretty lightly in the early stages when I'm sketching stuff in. Let's see here. Byron says, I've been sketching some things for a sci-fi webcomic, just trying to flesh out the world and get a visual grip on the kind of story I want to tell. Yeah, that's something I want to do too, is just sit down and really work out my character designs, because that's something I also have not started yet, is even really designing the characters. I have an amorphous picture in my mind of kind of how I want them to look, but I need to firm that up. Now, see, here's the thing. I'm happy with this head. I feel like the structure is good, but I also feel like maybe I should have her head tilted up more, giving her a little bit more attitude. Made her neck a little too skinny. The top of her head is a little too bulbous. I need to kind of flatten this out a little bit. Spent some time last night just doodling some sketches on the iPad. And it's funny how I realize sometimes when I'm drawing that I am still trying to get the hang of drawing digitally. Maybe I need to show a little bit more of the underside of her nose. That will also kind of sell the angle of looking up at her. But see, this is one of those things that is a slippery slope, because this is how you end up with features that are all messed up. Is you say, all right, well, let me just change this one feature so it looks more this way. And yeah, it might look more like we're looking at the underside of her nose, but it might also then make her nose feel out of place on the rest of her face. So I can only push that so far before I need to go back and just redraw the whole structure of the head. But I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine through text message, and we were talking about the whole idea of trying to, well, perfectionism, I guess, but it's more about the idea of trying to make work that satisfies you as the creator. And the idea of just saying, screw it, and cranking out a ton of work versus taking your time and making something that you really feel proud of. Because the faster I work, usually the less happy I am with a piece. But that could just be my own personal neuroses at work. Me somehow thinking that if I bust my ass and make something like agonizingly hard in terms of the amount of work I put into it, that somehow maybe that will make it. That means it's better just because I worked harder on it. Instead of doing something that comes naturally and fluid and simple. Let's see here. Yeah, Byron says, I understand that feeling. No matter how good I get at digital, there's always that slight feeling of disconnect. Speaking of which, one of the things I was meaning to do is I finally have a camera that's not a SLR camera, but it's like a inexpensive camcorder that's also capable of live streaming. And I want to see if I can hook that up. The big problem that I've had in terms of my setup is that when I use my webcam that I currently have set up to do traditional drawing, where I have it posted above my table, it's either right at, you've seen me talk about it, it's either right in my face so I can get it close to the board, or I have to have it way above and I can't zoom in with the controls I have. Whereas this camera has a physical zoom built into it. So hopefully what I can do is I can post it above my table, but still zoom in tight enough that it's, you can get a really clear view. And I can start doing some more traditional pieces, which is something I really haven't done much of since I finished inking. Well, yeah, since I finished inking Morningstar. So maybe we can do a little bit more traditional work. I feel like I should make her bottom lip just a little bit fuller. Not fuller, but broader. It's amazing what a change of like an eighth of an inch wider can do for creating the feel for a certain character. And this might sound nuts to you guys, but I think when I finish just sketching this a little bit more, I'm going to do another head right next to it, tilted a little bit more so I can decide which angle I really want. Let's see here. Yati's in the chat. Hello, Yati. Thanks for stopping in. Amar's here. Hey, how's it going? Let's see here. Yeah, Byron says, I've said it before a couple months ago, but every artist needs to understand their own pace and what they ultimately want. While spending a lot of time on one piece may not necessarily make it better, it leads to satisfaction, and the artist understands that they may not be as prolific. I say that's fine. Let's see here. And Yati says, I draw along at my place while Jeremy's sketching. Feels great to be back at Art University. All right, well, congratulations. Glad you're back at university. I hope that they are filling your brains with tons of cool, interesting stuff. I will tell you that one thing I did not take advantage of when I was younger, when I was in school, was studying art history. And for some people, art history is a little bit boring, other than maybe the Renaissance artists. But as I've gotten older and I've seen how much the symbology that we use in art the themes, the mythologies, all of the things that go into contemporary artwork that come from art history. I see how much of it is from there, and I'm like, wow, I really should have paid more attention. Like, I honestly feel like I might be a better artist if I were an art history major and then just spent my spare time taking figure drawing classes. So I had more context, because most of what I've learned about draftsmanship, I learned outside of art school anyway. I mean, I've learned in classes, but they were in figure drawing workshops in classes I've taken post my university degree. But you know what? Maybe art history would be the same thing, where no matter what I thought I learned in university, most of my education in terms of art history might come from post university as well too. So you know what? There's no knowing one way or the other. My point is, if they have some interesting art history classes, give them a shot and try to be open. I don't know. You might actually already be really into art history, and I'm lecturing you for no reason. But if you're not, you might learn a lot of really interesting things about the process of making art and what content goes into that art by enriching yourself with art history classes. So just a subtle, a small thing to mention there that might be useful for you. Things that I wish someone had told me when I was in school. So this head feels like it has a nice structure to it, and it needs all of the serpents added. And I would have to scale this down anyway, just to add the rest of the composition. But I am going to shrink this down specifically so I can draw another head next to it and see how I feel about it. And pardon me while I blow my nose, because allergies never seem to go away. Ah. Let's see here. Oh, I see. Yati says, no, it feels as if I'm back at uni. I have a master in graphical design. Okay, cool, cool. And he says, not my university. Art history was bad where I studied. Professors cared very little in regard of lectures. The useful stuff was composition and color theory, taught me a lot, and drawing, of course. And Yati says, oh man, I suffer from allergies also. This should be the art and allergies channel. Everybody seems to have hay fever. We have two cats, and I'm not allergic to cat, but they shed so much that I think the extra dust, like, eventually turns into something that irritates my allergies a little bit more than it would otherwise. All right. So let me take this one and just shrink it down, move it up there into that corner. And let me try another one. And the whole point of this is just making it slightly angled up more. Just exaggerating that tip up of the head. Well, it's not slight. It's actually pretty exaggerated in terms of how much I have the tilt going, but I wanted to exaggerate it more. Amar says the only allergy I have is not having enough money and freeloaders. Again, another allergy that we all suffer. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just trying to get this nice balance of structure and attitude. So I feel like I haven't even really put too much of the attitude into this sketch yet, but it's a good starting point. Just getting the angle right. It's like I'm beginning the visual storytelling of this piece just by getting the pose close to what I want. Hey, Cassiel's in the chat. How you doing? He's back. Let's see here. Amar says, I'm hoping within this year or next I learn enough about stocks and crypto to free me up and to be able to free myself of that money problem. Now, I hear you. It's one of those things where I think, obviously people who know the system, understand what they're doing, are figuring out how to invest wisely and make good profits off it. For me, the hardest part is just I'm so busy with the day-to-day survival and just getting through, things I need to get done. It's hard to find the time to put into that kind of research. I mean, that said, obviously, if it were really a priority for me, I'd find a way to do it because you see how much time I obviously spend studying art and taking classes on art. I bet you somebody has a cryptocurrency class, cryptocurrency 101, crypto college. Let's see here. Yati says, I wish I didn't have to go to work and would spend all my days like the last two drawing nonstop. Yeah. I mean, for me, what makes this kind of stuff easy is I feel that kind of longing as well. But I generally try to just make sure that every day I get in like an hour of drawing time. If I get 1 hour a day of just sitting at the board, and whether it's doing studies, character designs, you know, doing some sort of illustration work, whatever it is, if I get to do that for 1 hour a day, that fills that longing that I feel in my soul in terms of doing creative work. Like it would be nice to be able to completely lose myself in the creative process day in day out for hours at a time. But you know what? I understand that that's a privilege not everyone has. And instead of being upset that I don't have it, I try to make do with what I do have, show gratitude for it, and just try to make progress wherever I can. Now, I was listening to a podcast. There's an artist named Chet Zar. He has a podcast called the Dark Art Society podcast. I am a big fan of his work, and I really love just the topics that they talk about, because they get into kind of the healing nature of art and how it's a coping mechanism. It's a tool to help us navigate the ins and outs and the grinds of daily life. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, I keep missing out on these stocks and crypto that have some risk, but no more than the lottery. Minimal investment with the right research and gains. He said people made a lot of money selling stock trends of AMC, buying low and selling high. Mm-hmm. More econ conversation in the chat. Let's see here. Amar says, I miss Bitcoin, which was introduced to me in 2012. Says I would be a multimillionaire now. And the same goes for Apple when I started using them back in the 80s, Amazon in the 90s, Netflix in the 2000s. Well, see, that's the interesting thing. No one really knows what's going to be that next big thing that pops. And let's see here. Yati says, oh man, an hour, that'd be torture if I tried that. I want more than 14 hours. Well, you know what? I understand that feeling, but this is what I discovered. And this may not be true for you, but this is just the advice I can give you based on my experience. I found that I would not necessarily draw unless I could draw for the number of hours that I really wanted, closer to what you said, being able to work for, several hours at a time. But what I found is I would hold off on drawing until I had that amount of time set aside, so I would actually draw less. And if I just suffered, the fact that when you are in a creative groove, stopping when you're just getting warmed up, it is painful. You generally feel like this psychic twist in your soul when you have to stop, and you're like, I'm just reaching that place where I'm starting to that joy, that buzz, that endorphin rush that you get from making things. I'm just hitting that now, and I have to stop. But if I only waited until I had like 4 or 5 hours of extended time to draw uninterrupted, then I would draw one day for 4 or 5 hours. Whereas if I just said, okay, I'm going to draw for an hour a day every day, I could always make sure I had 1 hour that I could do. So I would draw 5 days a week, plus sometimes in the evening I'd be able to get an extra hour in. So then I'd find that I'd be getting between 5 and 10 hours in during the week, plus whatever I could do on the weekends. And at a certain point, I learned to make peace with that unpleasant sensation of having to stop when I'm just hitting my flow. But the overall result was that, as opposed to getting one day where I could find 4 or 5 hours to draw interrupted, I was getting 10 to 12 hours, or the 14 hours a week that you're talking about. I was able to get that in just in little chunks throughout the week, and then maybe 2 or 3 hours of drawing on the weekend, 2 or 3 hours at a time on Saturdays and Sundays. And I would encourage you to consider that, the idea of being able to get more done in the aggregate, even if you can't spend the number of hours at any given time that you would like. Just something to think about. That changing that perspective, that's what allowed me to finish my my graphic novel. You know what's funny is I'm taking all this time to work out all these features. The plan for this is to have her mostly in silhouette. I'm like, why am I working so hard on getting the features placed right? Because I'm a glutton for punishment. Trying to give her kind of a heavy upper eyelid. This a little bit. Oh, wow. I didn't even realize oh, that's the eraser. No wonder it's up to full opacity. Bring the opacity up a little bit so I get some darker lines in here. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yadi says that makes a lot of sense. Like if one had more time to do, they wouldn't really use 100% of that time. I did that a lot of times actually. See here, Amar says, yeah, maybe the sculpting approach would be faster. Just blocking in shapes based on the pose, then moving on to the poses that you like, and then fleshing those out. Yeah, it's funny. It's not necessarily in terms of the pose itself. The angle that I'm trying to get is pretty. It's not too different between these. I mean, the main difference is that I have the head tilted just slightly more up. There was something. This is one of those cases where you draw a thumbnail and it gets exactly what you want in the thumbnail, and then you spend your whole time trying to chase that. So I'm trying to get something where her head is up, but she's kind of laid back and feeling a little bit regal. Well, I think part of the reason why I'm going and putting all these features in here is because what I'm going to probably do is have a lot of the features with rim light on them. So like imagine if her whole figure is filled in with black, and then I slightly underlit just a little bit of her chin, a little bit of the upper lip, the underside of the lower lip, you know, that arch, the inside of the arch of the eyeball. Like just having all of these things here so that I can have light play upon them within the shadows. So the real challenge is finding that right balance between getting all of the detail in there that I'm going to need without over rendering. Let's see here. It's funny. Right now, she looks more like a vampire than a gorgon. Just round out the tip of her nose a little bit. Let's see here. Byron says, you got into the flow without even realizing it. You know what's funny? He's talking about going into the flow. I realized just looking up at the clock that we're already like more than a half hour in. It feels like I literally just started like minutes ago. I mean, I forgot the fact that I already drew that whole one head beforehand. But yeah, once I started drawing and really locked in, it just I don't know, my brain just relaxed a little bit and I forgot about time and space, and I'm just here chatting with you guys while I'm sketching. So yeah, I think that's the other thing, going back to that conversation about getting into the flow, is that that practice that I developed of just drawing whenever I had time to draw instead of waiting until I could do it for several hours. I learned how to get into the flow kind of, I don't want to say on demand, but I could get there faster without realizing it. Stuff like this, where I would just start drawing and then I'm like, okay, I've only got an hour. And then I look up and that hour is already over. And I'm like, wow, where did that time go? Yeah, I would say that I am definitely happier with this head than the previous attempt. I think her neck might be a little bit too thick. And I probably have to just soften the underside here, just round this a little bit more. The underside of her neck is just a little too boxy. And this is the kind of stuff, like when I start drawing the eyebrows, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna need her eyebrows. That's really gonna be in shadow. And I have to stop myself from drawing stuff like this. But to be honest, this stuff's kind of fun. Let's see here. Cassiel says, I plan to paint digitally, maybe learn design or something else in the future, but now I'm going to dig deep down in drawing. I will do a course after doing the important stuff. He says, I think a course will help give me some orientation and methods about it. You know, that's the funny thing. What has made me able to draw digitally is drawing traditionally. Um, I've said this before. I do not think that traditional is better or worse than I don't think traditional is better or worse than digital in terms of as a tool for making art. But when it comes to learning art, I definitely feel that that digital is more it's more conducive to artistic learning. I think it's easier. I'm not digital. Traditional is more conducive to the learning process. Just learning the fundamentals. I feel like that's easier with traditional work than it is with digital. So, you know, I think you're probably taking the right approach, because now when I draw, I'm just thinking about how to get the tool to make the marks that I want it to make. I'm not thinking about the how to draw unto itself, because that is so difficult on its own that I'm kind of like, I don't need extra challenges while I'm trying to work stuff out. There we go. She's got less of a smile and more of a serious look to her. That's enough. All right, so the real question now is, what format do I do here? I think for the next step, I kind of just take these two sketches and bring them both into a canvas size that's big enough to do like a real finished digital piece in, and then just sort of fill out the rest. Let's see here. Amar says, as the Harptones would say, life is but a dream, and I dream of you. And he says, in my case, the you of financial freedom. Yes, I definitely agree. That's a great thing. Let's see. Yadi says, this is so cool. I usually listen to music, but listening to someone talking and drawing is like relaxing a lot. You know what? It's great. I feel like maybe I'm providing a little bit of ASMR to people, like kind of just that calming. You're hearing someone talking about their process. Personally, I like listening to Steven Zapata's YouTube channel because he kind of does the same thing while he's working. You just hear him talking about his process and his thoughts, and he's somebody I learn a lot from watching his work as well. So the idea of providing that for other artists is very flattering to me. I'm glad that I can be useful in that way. Yadi also asks, what drawing software is that? I'm using Procreate. You know what? I don't know if Procreate is only on the iPad. I feel like it should be available for Windows tablets or an Android, but I actually don't know. But yeah, Procreate is my go-to digital tool. I really prefer drawing in this. Let's see here. Cassiel says the only type of music I like is that one that's good. I like instrumental ones more. I'm kind of all over the map. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm drawing. Hang on, gotta blow my nose again. I tend to listen to music when I'm writing. And then I have a whole playlist that's just called writing music, and it's mostly soundtracks. A lot of Hans Zimmer, some Daft Punk in there. Trying to think what else I've got. Some Aphex Twin. There's this great composer I like to listen to named Ben Frost, and it's like this dark, grisly. It's like the speakers are trying to eat itself. It's kind of Nine Inch Nailsy, but slower. But I really like listening to his work while I'm writing. Drinking a little coffee in my metal straw. And yes, in talking about learning, Amar says I would concur. Start traditionally, then do digital is easy. Yeah, very much. He says, same as if you did live sculpting. It makes it easier to sculpt with digital clay. Which, that's something I've never done. I signed up for a sculpting class once many years ago. And then I had to drop out because I was in between gigs. And it was a time when I actually had the opportunity I got a new job, and it was a full-time gig, and I just had to drop out of the class because the hours, it was like during the week, and I just couldn't do it. So let me see here. Right. I'm just checking my my canvas size before I go over here and create a new canvas. We'll do a couple of things here. First, let's go to this layer and let's copy. Now, let's go back out here and let's go with, I'm trying to decide here. $16 by $20. Let's paste, blow this up. And then go back to the other one. And now take that head that I drew. And I don't need the whole thing. So let's just select this. And, oops. Copy. So one thing I don't like about Procreate is that the switching from window to window, it is fairly seamless, but it's not like Photoshop where you've got multiple windows open and you just drag and drop from one window to the other. I don't know if there is a way that they would be able to set it up to make it easier to do like kind of a fast switching process. It might just eat up too much resources on the device. I'm going to drop the opacity down on this under sketch. And now I'm just going to refine this sketch based on the positioning of the that thumbnail. I'm just going to continue with the red one and sort of just refine everything. And then I'll probably go in with black. I'll flip it first to make corrections. And then I will go in with black and just tighten up the line art. Maybe I'll just finish this as like a black and gray drawing. Because that's the other thing. I feel like I want to go back and redo the first Medusa one I had. And it's kind of a problem I have is where I get neurotic about wanting to redo and redo and redo a piece. But this is going to sound really shitty to you guys. I was talking, I was telling you that conversation I was having with a friend of mine about being satisfied with the piece versus being efficient. And I said, I think the biggest problem that I have as an artist is that I am more concerned with satisfying myself than I am my audience. And I think you guys, being fellow creatives, you're like, well, yeah, you should satisfy yourself first. But I think also talking to someone like, Amar having the experience, being as experienced as he is creatively, I think he also comes at this from that standpoint that I have about, I want to satisfy myself, but I realize the practicalities of being economically successful as an artist requires satisfying your audience. If you just make something that's just for you and no one else cares about it, then you're not going to have a large audience and you're not going to be financially successful. And I think that I acknowledge that, but I feel like I have a bit of a spiritual internal war between those two ideas. The idea of pleasing the audience versus pleasing myself. Right. I'm just turning that that background layer off because I realize that if I try to make her body match exactly what's there, I think that's the mistake I made last time. So now I'm just going to try and make the body match my memory of what that is, but do it over this sketch, if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to say is make the pose match this head as opposed to trying to just replicate what's in that initial sketch. Because even this new head that I've drawn does not perfectly match the initial sketch that I had. Let me catch up here on the old comments. Let's see here. A few minutes ago, Byron said, I feel like traditional also teaches something that digital kind of can't. The ability to accept mistakes and move on instead of noodling hours of practice with a sketch that you don't really learn a lot from. Yeah, that's very, very true. I mean, as you see, I am definitely the noodle factory over here. But that said, I have been known to draw a picture to the point where I pretty much just destroyed the paper and had to start over again because I had done so many different iterations and revisions. So that can happen with traditional as well. But I do agree with your point in theory. So I think one of the things I at least learned from the earlier sketches was to try and draw this. Like when I was drawing kind of the whole upper body, maybe indicating or trying to suggest that that shoulder, the shoulder that's on the right, that arm is going back so that it made more sense for this arm to be coming forward at the angle that it is. I think the other thing I'm noticing is that she is definitely becoming thicker than I necessarily intended. Kind of a bulkier frame. Now, I didn't intend for her to be petite either, but I wasn't trying to turn her into like a female MMA fighter. Wasn't trying to make her the Medusa Ronda Rousey. Let's see here. Byron says, by the time the paper is destroyed, you're forced to move on. Digital, you can erase forever. Yes, very, very true. Oh, and when we were talking about music earlier, Yadi says, have you heard Trent Reznor's Ghosts album? He says it's absolutely amazing. Yes, Ghosts, both volumes are in my writing playlist. That's very much similar to the type of stuff that I listen to. Cassiel says, David Finch has good lessons about composition and some others that I've searched. I note them all. If you, Cassiel, go to Cartoon Kayfabe on YouTube. They are two cartoonists, Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg. They recently did a very great video on one of the famous artists' courses, specifically on composition. And you can find the actual course online if you just search for the PDF. They do a great video reviewing the overall content of it. I highly recommend that. They have great interviews, and they also have great in-depth examinations of different comic books, graphic novels, artistic resources. Definitely recommend you check that out. But specifically, just because you brought up composition, that recent episode was one that I ate it up like chocolate. And Oh yeah, in terms of the of Procreate, Amar does say that it's only on the iPad, which I mean, obviously the app is doing well and people like it. I find it awe considering how many people. Yes, the iPad is a pretty popular tablet, but it seems to me like I'm one of those make things available on every platform possible. And I'm sure they probably would if they could. It might just be a matter of manpower in order to support building a program on that program on more than one platform. Let's see here. Byron says many of the Japanese artists I learned from mention that popular artists make art as a gift to someone else. In this case, the gift to the audience. It's an interesting thought. Yes, that is an interesting thought. And Yate says, why not satisfy both the artist and oneself? I'm betting Amar is going to give you the answer to that immediately afterwards. He says, slave to the audience for commissioner art. Art they like, do what you love, and find the audience that love what you do because of that. Well, it's kind of like I believe that it is possible to do both, but it can be challenging because finding that audience that does appreciate or desire the thing that comes to you instinctively, for some artists that happens right away. For some artists, pardon me, that takes a lot of time. For some artists, that takes years. I think that it is possible to do both, but I don't think it's necessarily easy. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. I'm just going to drag this whole shoulder forward because that's kind of what I see in my head. Is not that her body is slimmer, she just has her arm, that shoulder pushed forward, and that arm is moving forward towards us. Kind of like we're looking at her from a 3/4 angle, but she's pulling this shoulder forward like that. So it's almost like we're seeing more of a straight on of it. Like it looks like we're seeing, more of a straight on angle, like a side of that shoulder because it's turning towards us. That might be a little bit too much. Let me pull it back a little bit. There we go. Yeah, but I think that the idea of doing work that specifically pleases an audience versus pleases yourself, I think that there is something in there that ideally you could do both. But I think that a lot of times you do find that there's a disconnect or a gap. So let's see here. Let's see here. Byron says that is the Goldilocks zone I think most artists are trying to reach. Amar says the doing what you love and finding and find the audience that love you because of that. And he says the latter is better and less stressful. He said that's why I stopped using pencils at least 2 decades ago. Let's see here. Cassiel says, talking about the Japanese animators and mangakas have an exhausting routine with a lot of hard work. They don't eat or sleep, but they do a lot of this because they love so much what they do. Yes, I do. I very much empathize with that. But I have found that my health, I'm trying to prioritize my health above just making art because I do think that that can be very detrimental. I want to have a nice, long, healthy, enjoyable life. And sometimes I think letting it be all consuming, that's a young man's game. You know, I'm in my 40s, and I figure if I haven't gotten to the point where I'm making comics full time now, then I want to just sit down, enjoy. And I think that might be another reason why I don't rush my art as much, is because I enjoy the act, the process of making, I think, more than I enjoy. Like, I like having a thing that's completed, but most people, it's more like their goal is to have the finished thing. My goal is just to enjoy the process. I really, really just love making it. And the idea of making an object to sell is simply a way to try and monetize the time I'm spending so I can afford to spend more time doing the thing that I actually enjoy, which is the creating. Cassiel also asked if I can put a link into the channel I'm talking about. I'm going to go to the actual video. So let's see here. All right, I have to mute my speakers real quick because I'm going to click on the video and I don't want it to start playing. Well, it's going to start playing, but let's see here. All right, here's the composition video. And let me share. YouTube runs really slow when you are live streaming while you're actually clicking on a video. So, all right, I'm posting this in the comments, and hopefully it should just come through, and you should be able to see that that video. But the channel itself, I'm posting the name in there. So yeah, you can look that up on YouTube. It's a great channel. Tons of great resource. If you're looking to learn more about the history of comics and illustration, they talk a lot about that. I highly recommend it. It's both entertaining and educational. Let's see here. Yati says, I may be irrational, but I would love to experience that kind of lifestyle. You know, I don't think it's irrational. I think it's just when you love something, you really do want to completely absorb yourself in it. But also, as I've gotten older, I have found that life work balance really does help you. Just, it helps with your sanity and your overall health. It helps with your interpersonal relationships, because let me put it this way. I bet you all of us here, regardless of our family situation, have fantasies. There's time when we fantasize just being a freak on a desert island with a bunch of art supplies and just not interacting with any other humans. But I can tell you, as somebody who has who's had different relationships, I'm married, I have found that it adds a lot to my life, having a partner and having someone that I spend time with and doing non-art things. My wife is very, very understanding of how much time I spend doing creative work, but still, it's necessary. I do need to spend. She helps pull me out of that hole of just completely letting yourself get sucked into art. I think that there's something healthy about that. I think that it is important to be grounded and connected to something in the world. If someone is able to make a full and rich life and they are completely untethered from personal obligations, I'm like, so be it. It's not my place to judge them. But I have found that for as much as I enjoy I think that I maybe enjoy losing myself in art that much more because there's a point at which I have to come home. Or not have to, well, kind of have to, but that don't live there forever. That I come out of it and I spend time with my wife. I speak with my family. Occasionally have dinner with friends. I mean, my closest friends are also artists, so we do tend to just talk about the process a lot. But I think for people who really do say screw it, I don't want to be attached to any other interpersonal relationships and just give themselves completely over to their art. I think a lot of people sometimes have, art becomes a refuge for people who maybe have a dysfunctional family, or there's things in their past that have made them not necessarily want to engage with others. I'm pretty lucky that I have a good relationship with my family, and I feel like I was, raised in a pretty healthy environment. For as much as I love to draw really strange shit, in fact, I remember I went through a phase when I first started doing comic conventions where I would meet people who had seen my work online and then met me at a convention, and they were kind of disappointed that I was so normal and straight laced because the stuff that I intentionally drew like really weird, freaky, like H.R. Giger was one of my he's still one of my influences, but I don't necessarily do stuff that really feels as much like that now. But when I first started out, people really expected me to be kind of a strange, like weirdo. And I'm just sort of like a quiet, boring guy who's, kind of friendly, tries to be polite, making artwork. And they're just like, oh, you're like just a normal dude. And I'm like, well, sorry to disappoint you that I'm not a serial killer, but I'm just a guy who draws weird stuff. But I think that there are definitely cases of people who, for whatever reason, getting over family trauma, emotional trauma, art is a refuge. And that thing also makes you want to not necessarily engage with people or trust people as much. And I understand that, but I think it's therapeutic to work beyond it. Again, another one of those Jeremy rants. Oh, hey, Mighty Geek is in the chat. Good to see you, man. He said in Japan, manga is disposable medium, like what American comics used to be. Yes, very true. Jay King has to bounce. He says, back to work. Always enjoy, brother and people. Good to see you too, man. Wow. See, this is what I'm talking about being in the zone. I'm sitting here talking with you guys and chatting, and I don't even notice that we're at an hour. All right. So why don't I run through some of the last comments in here, and then we'll wrap it up. I think from this point, I'm actually pretty happy with the pose or the figure. I'm going to flip the drawing, as I always say, and then it's just a matter of drawing the serpents in and then blocking in the lighting. And this is one of those things where, it might be interesting to just do the lighting first. But yeah, I do need to practice just drawing silhouettes. That is something I want to get back to. Let's see here. All right, some of the last comments here. We're just going to take a few minutes. I'm going to, instead of drawing, I'm just going to, touch base on everything else that's going on in the conversation, and then we'll close the episode out. Let's see here. Amar says, I would not always say the Japanese artists do that just because of the love. The industry they're in kind of dictates the time and level of work they have to put in to put out their work. It says, I think the market they're in is more than likely harder than the Western market. I mean, yeah, a lot of, from what I've heard, a lot of manga artists drop dead at like 50, like it's just, they're burnt out. They literally just burn themselves to the point where they don't have it anymore, and it kills them. And I don't want to die. I want to be like an old man. I want to be able to draw at like 99 and just be drawing. I want to draw long enough for them to figure out how to upload my brain into the singularity. And they're like, you know what? We'll put you in the cloud. And then virtual Jeremy can just go on forever making art. We keep talking about artificial intelligence. Maybe we'll be the AI once they figure out how to digitize the human consciousness instead of trying to create a machine that has consciousness. Or actually, you know what? Who knows? Maybe the AI machine is the key to unlocking digitizing human consciousness. Oh God, we all just want to be immortal. Ego, it's ridiculous. Let's see here. Yeah. Mighty Geek says the work habits of mangaka work well for those who are self-publishing because there's no rush. It's funny because the idea of the rush, those work habits, it feels like those are kind of the habits that, you know what it is, and I think this is debatable. So I'm not saying this is the law of the land, but the artists that work in mainstream comics work very, very hard. They're working 6 days a week, some days 7 days a week to put out these issues. The difference is that the level of detail that's in a lot of Western comics is greater than the level of detail that's in a lot of manga. The penciling, the inking, the lettering, the coloring, all of that work. So they're spending longer on each page. But I think that the from what I've heard, the pace for putting out a monthly comic today is grueling. And back in the 60s and 70s, it was grueling as well. But until you start getting to like the John Byrne era, a lot more. Previously, if you go back before Byrne, back into the 60s and 70s, I mean, if you go back into the 50s and 60s, you had simpler art. Doesn't mean it wasn't, really beautiful and dynamic like Kirby, or Ditko. But it was simpler, fewer lines, very powerful, but very simple compositions. John Buscema, all those things where they just got to the point. Alex Toth is the perfect example of that. Put down as many lines as you need to tell the story and no more. So my point being is that the amount of work and the left of the mangaka, the contemporary mangaka, feels like it's just as grueling as the life of the modern Western comic artist, except that it's just that they're putting more detail into each page, at all levels. That's again debatable. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says animation, comics, and game development, no matter how much you love it, the careers don't pay well until you get into that specialized management or C-level roles. And Cassiel says that's interesting questions too about why do you want to do art? Stumbling over those a bit. Scrolling past a few. Yeah, Cassiel says, yes, in Japan, it's very different from other countries. I like a lot of things they have there. Byron says, if they only knew about your ridiculous hay fever. I'm sure there's people in Japan who have hay fever. Although maybe they invented hypoallergenic cats too. That might be another thing. It says, Cassiel says, yesterday we're talking about Bitcoin. Now we're talking about manga. Well, you know what? Artists have many dimensions, and we talk about a lot of different things. Let's see here. Byron says, just because you ignore a genre or medium doesn't mean that the individuals aren't massively successful or rich and well known. So just look at Ghost in the Shell. He said many of these people are richer than Jim Lee. And Amar says, I get that, but how long did it take for Ghost in the Shell to cross over? And Byron says, Katsuhiro Otomo, the mangaka of Akira. And Byron says, Ghost in the Shell has been around in the West, around since the 90s in the West. It's like, yeah, I remember hearing about Akira when I was in high school. I think that's when it first got released in the West. And Amar says to this day is still like Akira, more of an underground film. That's a good point. But to be honest, if I had enough money to maintain a creative lifestyle, I don't really care about being a household name. Pardon me, get up on my nose. I mean, I look at the arc of history. Yes, it's nice that we remember artists of the Renaissance like Michelangelo and Raphael and Da Vinci, but um, but in the end, I feel like humanity is only going to last so long. And much as like in our individual lives, we only have one lifespan. We're eventually going to die out. I feel like that's going to happen to the human race at some point too. So everything that's on this planet and all of our civilization is going to be dust. And there may never even be some alien species that comes and finds the remains of our civilization. Even if they do, it's like we may laud the artists of the Renaissance because we can understand the records they left. But if you go back to the ancient Greeks, we don't really know who most of those artists were. There's some ancient Greeks some of the sculptures that have survived that we attribute to certain people. My point being is that for some people, legacy might be important. For me, the experience of enjoying making art while I'm alive is what's important. And if it all evaporates after I die, so be it. I mean, we don't know how many brilliant artists there are whose works were all just burned up or destroyed, works that were lost in World War II from artists who might have been up and coming. I mean, there's plenty of artists. You look at guys like Leyendecker or Bouguereau who fall out of favor. And yes, we're lucky that they have come back into favor. But I'd never heard about Bouguereau until like the past 10 years. This guy's been around for hundreds of years. Maybe people will discover my work afterwards. Maybe they won't. To be honest, it doesn't really do much for me right now. And again, that is also personal. For some people, legacy is very, very important. Not necessarily as much for me. Let's see here. See, Cassiel says, if you're a draftsman or something else, and if you study more, you can be very versatile, work with illustration, concept art, comics, etc. Yeah, it's true. I mean, a lot of comic artists move into animation because they're like, frankly, the pay is better. The pay is better. The work is not necessarily easier, but for the deadline, the amount of skill that they have, they can make more money working in video games and animation than they can in comics. I mean, even myself, I don't draw fast enough to work on a Marvel or DC title. And when I draw really fast, my quality falls through the floor. So I kind of feel like I need to work at the pace I need to. But, if no one's going to pay me to work at that pace, I'm like, all right, well, then I'm just going to make it my job. I'll be my employer and I'll do the work in my spare time. Let's see here. Byron says, considering manga has been outselling Marvel and DC for the last 6 months in the top 20, they are the zeitgeist nowadays. You know what? If someone is able to work at the pace of a mangaka, they should. I don't think they should work themselves to death. I just know that I can't do it. Let's see here. Cassiel says, there's a channel, very good talk about a lot of things in drawing that dig deep down and where they learn stuff. Let's see here. Amar says, also, how many artists that you mentioned have had careers and the pull of some other artists? Let's see here. Manga is selling more likely now because of the age bracket it's targeting. It's trendy. Let's see here. I don't know. I mean, this comes back to making the thing that you want and then just trying to find an audience. I mean, I don't think that manga really is necessarily trendy. I mean, I can remember when manga started being published in the 90s, first by Studio Proteus and then by Dark Horse Comics. And to me, that felt like the first American manga boom in like 1990. Like pre-Image was the first US. I mean, you could get manga in the United States, but it really felt like, well, let's say prior to 90s, whenever Akira started being published by the Marvel imprint of Epic Comics, I think that was when we first started seeing manga making its way into actual comic shops. And then after that, Studio Proteus and Dark Horse kind of broke things wide open. There's a lot of books in the early 90s that I discovered. It was pretty popular back then. And I mean, since then, it's gone up and down and up and down. But I don't even feel like this is a current manga boom, because I can remember at the height of Borders, way before Borders, was going out of business, at its height. So this was probably early to mid 2000s. Like manga was just taking over bookstores, Barnes and Noble, Walden Books, Borders, every major bookstore. They had pretty substantial manga sections, and it seems like ever since then. So I would say it's not even trendy right now. I'd say probably for the past 20 years, manga has been pretty, pretty substantial in the bookstore market. Let's see here. All right, I feel like we've gone through a bunch of stuff that I don't know if catching up and reading all of these comic comments is enough to like. I've lost the thread in terms of I've fallen so far behind. I don't know if I can unweave that thread and make a reasonable conversation for the live stream. So let me just run through and see if there's any things that we want to address before we wrap up. Let's see here. Yeah, Byron does say that true American comics are now the indie underground. Marvel and DC just ain't worth it anymore. Well, yeah, but at the same time, you look at something like the live action Ghost in the Shell, and yes, that's a whole nother issue. The fact they cast Scarlett Johansson in that. But there's a lot of I still haven't seen that movie, but I just heard that the movie itself just didn't come together. But you look at, while the comics might be selling way less than manga, if you look at the Marvel and DC films, I mean, they're ruling the box office. You've got Shang-Chi breaking box office records during a pandemic. It's crazy. So let's see here. Yachty says, I'll make a fool out of myself, but I want to make art because I have a relentless desire to do it. I used to have many friends and party a lot. Now I want to draw. I'm a recluse and want to. It's all I ever wanted, actually. You know what? I get that. And I don't think there's anything foolish about it. If it's just a matter of making a living, there's much better ways to make money and make a living. The desire to make art just comes from an internal craving for self-expression. And I think that's normal. I mean, I wish more people indulged in it, because I think that society as a whole would be healthier if people had healthy, creative ways to express their deeper inner feelings. Let's see here. Amar says, I remember manga and anime back in the 70s. What's funny is I know that, obviously there's Astro Boy going back. There's Gatchaman, which was Battle of the Planets in the United States. And I mean, even you look at stuff like Voltron and Robotech, even though, yeah, that was an early manga anime crossover, crossing over into the West. And yeah, but Amar says it took them at least 20 or 30 years before people were talking about it. They said, I remember the 90s people talking about both. They're still not taking up much headspace. See, Yati says, there were jobs where I could draw in my spare time. They were part-time jobs, but now financial situation has forced me into a full-time job. It's just so suffocating, wasting 170 hours monthly. Well, if you're really unhappy with your job, always be on the lookout for new opportunities. Doesn't mean that you have to jump from job to job to job. But while you're doing the job, you do it, just spend a little bit of time trying to find, my first job in the toy industry, I wasn't a product designer for probably 7 or 8 years. I started as a packaging designer, and that's just because I've been doing graphic design for many years, and I had that comic book look and the type of my aesthetic fit with toys. So it was a good fit for me as a packaging designer. I didn't even make my way into being a toy designer for a long time. You may not, your first creative job still may not be something that you love. The point is I know you mentioned before that you really didn't have a great working environment in terms of the people you were working under. Just try to find something where you at least feel respected and treated well. You know, maybe it's a creative job, maybe it's not. But you get a job where you don't hate going in every day, and you do that for a while you're trying to find a job that's creative. Then you find a job that's creative that you enjoy, and then maybe you move closer and closer to the thing you actually want to be doing. Because to be honest, as a kid, I wanted to be a toy designer. So really, I already kind of have the job that I always wanted. It's just that I love comics, and I have a certain level of control over it when I do my own personal work. But other than that, I mean, I really do. I'm very, very fortunate. So, but it took a long time to get there. So, you know, you just have to keep moving closer and closer to it. It's unrealistic to think you're just going to jump from what you're doing now to the perfect job. It happens, but it's not likely. What's really likely is that you make smaller steps bit by bit. Let's see here. Mighty Geek says Dark Horse cornered manga in the 90s. Yeah, they did. And let's see here. Cassiel says there's not, with a question, there's not obsessed artists. I'm like, there are artists who just come in, work at like a 9-to-5 job, just make their art and then quit when it's over. And let's see, Johnny Fitz is in the chat. Hello, how you doing? Let's see here. Amar says, and talking about the 90s onto now, and he says that falls into exactly what I was saying. The past 20 years means that trends more to audiences that are in their 25 to 30-year range. Maybe, but also just the fact that they're in the bookstores now. Maybe the people that are 25 or 30 are now the people that are stocking and ordering the books. But, you know, the people that are still reading it, it still tends to be aimed at teenagers. I don't know. Mighty Geek says the problem is that the films don't reflect the comics. I think that this is a matter of opinion. I don't think it's a fact, only because I just look at the films as another universe. The same way that DC has Elseworlds and Marvel has the what ifs. When you tell stories that take place outside of a main universe, like when you look at Batman, you've got the Burton universe, they're doing the Batman 89 stories. I feel like the best representation of Batman overall has been Batman the Animated Series. That has consistently been the best. Like, it walks the line. It's not quite as campy as the Adam West Batman, but it's not quite as dark and brooding as Dark Knight. But it can go there. You know, they've done scenes where they have Dark Knight-esque segments in it, or they've referenced the Dark Knight in some stories. But the thing is, with all of those, you look at like the live-action films, you look at the one that the Batman Begins movie, and then you look at the new one that's coming out now. I just look at them as like, it's like when you finish reading one story arc, and then a new artist comes in and does something different, or you're looking at an Elseworlds, a story that's slightly out of a different continuity. That's how I look at the films. They're just a different iteration. It's like when a new writer comes in on a comic book. That's, to me, that's all it is. I don't think it needs to look exactly the same or have the exact same tone or even the exact same continuity. I really don't mind. All that matters to me is that the story is entertaining. I really don't care about continuity. Because I found when I was reading comics in the 90s, I stopped following characters and I started following creators. And I found that when you had, you know, when John Byrne moved on to a book, he might change some stuff and rewrite out some of the continuity that was in the past. But if he told a good story, I liked it. You know, then Walt Simonson comes in and he may do something different. And it may not exactly be exactly what came before. I mean, he may change up some stuff. I mean, yes, most comic creators try to respect the continuity and they try not to contradict things. They just try to add to the canon as opposed to contradicting it. But if someone does wipe something out of continuity or change things, I mean, look at the Winter Soldier. For the longest time, whenever they talked about characters dying and coming back, they said, well, are they dead or are they Bucky dead? Until Bucky came back. you know. And yes, he added to the continuity as opposed to contradicting it. But again, it's a big change. Um, and that's kind of how I feel. It comes and goes, and I don't really care with the cinematic stuff. The fact that they're going to have to, as characters age out, like we've seen Robert Downey Jr. kind of age out. I mean, he's still, I think, young enough to play Tony Stark, but he's kind of aging out of the Marvel universe, and not going to keep doing it. At a certain point, they're going to have to bring in a younger Tony Stark, and they're going to have to do that with everybody. I mean, with the X-Men, when they bring the X-Men in, they're going to have a Wolverine, and I would love to see Hugh Jackman continue to do Wolverine, but they're going to have to bring somebody in younger eventually. That unto itself is a form of retconning, and I'm okay with it. Let's see here. So Johnny asks a question. He says, I gave up art and comics for good. Does being an artist sometimes take its toll? So I can't find the positivity in art anymore. Everyone's ruined it. Yeah, it definitely takes a toll. You don't hear me talk about it as much because my personal focus tries to be, I try to focus on the things that I actually enjoy, the positivity of making art. I realize I'm just sitting here visually. This is probably boring for a lot of people because I stopped drawing and now we're just talking. But I think that I focus on the fact that the act of making the art is pleasurable for me. And so I focus on just doing that and finding joy in it. But sometimes doing art and not necessarily getting financial compensation for it, doing art and then not getting any attention or any love or acknowledgement for the thing we pour our blood, sweat, and tears into, that takes a toll. Doing artwork and just being unsatisfied with the results, feeling like, oh, because all of us feel like our work can be better. Just because art always can be better. There's always things to learn and grow, but that's what keeps me interested, is that there's something that I'm never going to master. In a strange way, the inability to reach perfection keeps me interested in art. But for some people, that hamster wheel of never reaching a destination can be existentially crippling. So yeah, I always say that you shouldn't force yourself to do things if it's crushing your soul. So I can understand that, and you have to take care of your own emotional and mental health. And maybe that means you may take a step back from art for a few years and then come back to it. May mean that you're just like, yeah, you're not going to make stuff anymore. Doesn't mean that you can't still enjoy consuming art and animation and books by people that make things that you love. It just, if it doesn't, you don't need to feel any type of guilt or shame for turning your back on it if it stops giving you joy. That's the only reason to do it. Let me put it this way. Making art is so difficult that the only reason to do it is because it gives you joy. So if it stopped giving you joy, then that's okay. And I think that the art community is full of people who don't make art, but love art and creativity. Like, they just love people. And I think that people like you are always welcome in the artistic community because you appreciate work and you appreciate how hard it is to make, even if you're not making it. So, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to, stop hanging out with artists or watching artistic videos, like hang out on this channel. You're always welcome to come and hang out, even if you don't enjoy making art anymore. Yeah, I think that there's definitely room for that. I mean, those are the people who are the biggest supporters of creatives, I think, a lot of times. So yeah, that's my answer. Yeah, it takes a toll. And it's not that I ignore that toll. It's that I focus on the reward as opposed to the toll that it takes. But yeah, it's there and it's real, and I get it. And going back to it, like Cassiel says, you can make art for yourself to express. And Amar says art should be your obsession and your love. Yeah, I think that loving it is what makes you keep doing it. But if you're not in love with it, then that's okay. Yeah, Amar says do what you love and what makes you happy. And Yadi says, don't worry, if you feel like stopping, stop. You may come back to it. Yeah, exactly what I said. You'll definitely learn something new. Maybe art is not for you. I've had crisis many a time. Um, let's see here. Cassiel says, I have some questions to you all. Why and what do you do or want to do art? And why do you like art? Why is art important to you? I don't know if I'll have time to read everybody's answer in here, but I know for me, it is, I covered it earlier. It's simply that the act of making art I find spiritually calming, like meditating. And you could, let me put it this way, there's plenty of people who just meditate. You don't have to sit down and do art in order to do it, but it's a way to channel my inner emotions in a positive and healthy manner. And sometimes I draw really weird, twisted shit, and that's processing maybe negative emotions through art. But that's why I make it. I make it because it's cathartic. It helps me get things out emotionally. So yeah, that's why I make art. And the desire to share that art with others and to make products that I can sell is again, as I mentioned, it's only a factor of making it a commodity allows me to put more time into it. You know, I mean, if you're meditating, you can't sell meditation. You just meditate, you get the peace. But if I, oh, look at this, got a super chat. Oh, wow, this was like my buddy 47s, my buddy Alejandro Lee, amazing, fantastic artist. Yeah, Alejandro, thanks for tossing in there a super chat. Let's see. I don't know how it lets me put the super chat on the screen. There should be a way to add it. But he says, Jeremy, just want to throw some support. Throw you some support. Always enjoy hearing you articulate your mindset while doing your thing. There should be a way to put the super chat on the screen, and I don't know how to do it. And it is frustrating me because I want to, you know, I have verbally acknowledged, but I wanted to throw that up there. But my buddy Alejandro, great artist, great friend. I haven't seen him in ages because I haven't been doing conventions, but I know he recently has been doing some shows. So I hope you're doing well, staying safe out there, and I appreciate the acknowledgement and thanks for throwing that support out there. I never mentioned that enough. Yeah, super chats are available on this channel. So if you people want to throw a tip in there, if subscribing for the Patreon ain't your bag, but you want to throw in a buck or two here and there on a live stream, I'm not going to turn it away. I appreciate it. I support it. So I appreciate the support. So thank you. But yeah, coming back here to the questions. Let's see here. Oh, wait, there we go. That I can throw the super chat up there. I think that it appeared up top, and I didn't see a place where I could actually click to put it on there. So, all right, there we go. But let's see here. Byron says, I do art because I like the self-improvement and the storytelling. Let's see here. And Amar says, if you're doing art to please other people, then you're excluding the primary person, you. So, you know, I think for everyone, you know, it's doing because in some way you get something out of it. Yeah, Amar says, art equals you do what you love and what makes you happy. And he says, that's where you should start. Let's see here. Yadi says, I love doing art because my head is full of ideas and stories and I gotta vent them out, or it's making me nuts. I start acting out in public and people think I'm beyond regular crazy. You know, I mean, my head is full of crazy ass stories and I will easily just I've got a bookcase full of sketchbooks of ideas and I've got Google Docs filled with story ideas. I just need to start pumping them out, get them out there in the world. Let's see here. Yadi says, I'm torn between concept art and comics. The former feels industrialized, overcrowded. The latter daunting and demanding. So now I'm just drawing and we'll see what comes out top. Good, you know, and there's no world in which you it says you can't do both. I mean, there's another comic artist that I'm a big fan of, Guy Davis. He's the artist who drew BPRD for many years, and he also has a self-published series called The Marquise that I'm a big fan of. He also does a lot of concept art for films. He worked on a few Guillermo del Toro films, doing character designs. And speaking of Guillermo del Toro films, not Guillermo del Toro, but film concept artists, they're also comic creators. Jeff Darrow. Jeff Darrow has been a longtime collaborator with the Wachowskis, doing concept art from the original Matrix, and I think he's done work for a few different films. He also did, I think, a comic story in the Matrix comic book series. Yeah, he's another guy who goes back and forth between doing comics and doing film concept art. So let me see. Amar says art equals life. He said, my friend, my creativity, it makes me think. Art has been a key factor in making me the person I am today. Without it, I would be nothing. That's actually a good question. Is what would we be without art? I actually don't know. I was talking to my wife about this because just a conversation about how people define themselves by their work, and I realized that I know that it's not necessarily healthy to define myself solely by my art, by my work, and that I'm a person. All of us are people. We have value besides just the art that we make, just are as human beings. But I really don't necessarily acknowledge those other things and explore those other sides of my life. And I think that's one of the things that, in terms of, like I said, spending time with friends and loved ones away from art, to acknowledge and explore those ways in which our value just as human beings. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Amar already gave the answer on the whole super chat thing. And by the way, Yati was asking what Amar's IG is. Let's see. Yeah, Amar's got his NFT and his at Man of No Style Art Nomad. So that, yeah, check that out. You can check out Amar's stuff. He's got a lot of great pieces he's been cranking out. Let's see here. Cassiel says, in a nutshell, take a break and a bath after crying, the amount of hard work and compulsive overthinking about the abundant amount of tasks you have to do in a small period of time. See, Byron says Trent Coenga worked both as game concept art and comics, and he also has a YouTube channel. Yeah, I've watched a lot of videos and learned a lot from him. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yati asks Jeff Darrow, and that's not actually how you spell it. It is, you know what? I'm just gonna post a link to the cartoonist Kayfabe interview with them, because they did a great interview with Jeff Darrow. It's Jeff with a G, and it's Darrow. But I'm just gonna find that video and I'm gonna post that in the chat. Here it is. You see, is this muted? All right. And by the way, the video that I'm going to post here is just his interview. They have a whole nother video where they go through some of Jeff Darrow's comic books. He's collaborated with Frank Miller on some stuff. Rusty and Big Guy the Robot, and a great comic book called Hard Boiled, both of which I own. Very much worth checking out. Hang on, let me hit stop on that, because I think having that open while I'm live streaming is, again, killing my stream. All right. Oh, all right. Somebody already got it there. Yadi says, holy smoke. That's like a modern Mobius. You know what? Yes, he is. And believe it or not, he was friends with Mobius. He talks about that in the video. He moved to France at one point and actually lived down the street from him, would occasionally go over and have dinner with Mobius. Yes, pretty amazing. And he was talking about his IG name. It's Monsan. He says, which means happiness. He says, I created the acronym before I created the name. So I got the idea from my love of Bruce Lee. All right, I think that I have pretty much caught up with all of the comments, which is good because I stopped drawing like 40 minutes ago and just have been talking now. So other than us who are here enjoying this live stream, the other later half of this, like anyone else who came on just wanted to watch the drawing, is just gonna be like, dude, what's up? But you know what? Screw it. I'm here for you guys. And the fact that we can sit here and have this interesting conversation, just talking art and process, this is what I come here for. So, you know, this is for you guys. Anybody who just wanted to watch the artwork, if they stopped at the hour mark, shine them. You know what? Hope they enjoyed the drawing that they did get. See, yeah. Amar says, thanks for the stream, my dude. Alejandro's in the chat. Says, peace. Thank you so much, man. And again, thank you for the support and the super chat. Yeah, everyone, take it easy. Oh yes, I forgot. I got to do the normal closeout that we end the show with. Patreon, patreon.com. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber, get bonus live streams. Twice a month, we do what's called Art Book Study Group. We have been going through a book called Walt Reed, The Figure by Walt Reed, and I just sit down, do studies from the book, analyze the information, the contents in there, kind of show you my process for kind of learning and studying educational drawing content to try and up my skills. You can kind of draw along with me. Also, being able to read my comic books on all up there. And I post Patreon exclusive posts throughout the week, and some that go public later on. All of that is at patreon.com/GERIMI. You also get access to our Discord server where we share artwork, comments, you know, a little bit of an ongoing conversation, more of what we have here, but throughout the week. My newsletter.jeremy.net. You get a free digital sketchbook when you sign up. I send animated work in progress GIFs to share with you guys, and then just little blog posts about how my week's going, and my month's going, what I'm reading, what I'm watching on TV. All of that at newsletter.jeremy.net. Amazon.jeremy.net. That will take you to my my Amazon author page. You can pick up my first book, Eye of the Gods. It's a self-contained graphic novel. It's all a complete story about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up Morningstar Volume 1, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. It's issues 1 through 4. Issues 5 through 8, the conclusion of the series, coming soon. And at my main website, jeremy.net, you still pick up single issues. Morningstar issue 8, the final issues, and standalone right there. And that is everything. So guys, I mean, I keep talking about how I appreciate the lively conversation, and it's getting to the point now where it's like I draw for a little bit and then we just hang out and chat, just chop it up about, you know, creativity and the process and what's going on. I think you guys asked a lot of stimulating questions and gave a lot of stimulating answers. You know, Cassiel and Yadi, I hope that you guys both continue to, you know, Yadi, I hope that you find some, you know, some peace in terms of your work life. Johnny Fitz, hey, you know what? Like I said, yeah, that emotional cost that you have as a creative is real. I think that we all feel that, even though we, you know, that mindset of being obsessed about art is what helps push us through those dark times. But obsession is a double-edged sword, and it can be damaging. So I acknowledge that I am obsessed about my art, but I also tell people to be wary of that. For those who, you know, there's definitely people for whom that obsession can be harmful. And I think we all want to survive the creative process. In fact, there's a another podcast that they aren't making any new episodes, but there's a podcast called Surviving Creativity. That if you can find the old episodes, it's got Scott Kurtz from PvP and Dave Kellett from Comic Lab and Corey Cassoni, who's Scott's business manager, and they all did this show together with guests, and it was just about it's literally what the show is about, the ups and downs of surviving the creative life. Maybe that's something for you to check out and listen to. For any of you guys who are having some hard times, go listen to some of the old episodes of that. But again, everyone, thank you so much. I see Elaine is in the chat. Wow, Elaine says, as a story writer who knows exactly how I want the artwork, but unfortunately my artistry is not good enough. How do artists charge to help co-create a graphic novel? It is different with every creator. Most important thing is that you want to have a business contract drawn up. That's to protect both the writer and the artist. You want to understand, if it's something where you as the writer are going to own the entire property, then usually a work for hire contract where you are paying the artist a page rate is one business arrangement. There can be a business arrangement where the artist is working for a reduced rate, but they are owning part of the intellectual property and you're sharing that. You want to discuss up front what those arrangements are going to be, how it's going to be divided up. You also want to discuss how the profits from the actual books are going to be divided up or whatever the content is. And I say this because these are difficult conversations to have, and they're difficult to have with somebody that you don't know very well. But if you have arguments and butt heads, you can't come to an agreement. The fact of the matter is that you probably wouldn't have come to an agreement even if you just started working together and built a whole book and put it out in the world. And it's better to realize you aren't eye to eye on who owns what and how much the conversation is going to be. It's better to know that up front and decide, okay, maybe this isn't the right partner for me. It's better to know that before you start, because that will save you and your creative partner heartache. There are cases where artists may decide, I believe in this as much as the writer, we're going to own it 50-50, and the artist might just put sweat equity into it. To be like, I haven't published my work anywhere else, or I want to do this thing with you, and we're just going to, they'll do the work, doing the art and knowing that they're going to, own the book equally. The biggest problem for artists is that we usually need some sort of income while we're doing the time it takes to do the work. And that's usually why, usually some sort of compensation is done ahead of time. But, that's a longer, complicated question. And I think it'd probably be better to, I'll see if I can find some writer friends that want to come in and talk about that or feel comfortable talking about the business side. Because that is always a challenging thing for writers. Even though you're putting in your own sweat equity, writers can usually write, 3, 4, 5 projects at the same time, while an artist really, if they're drawing a thing, they can only do that one thing, which means if that one thing isn't bringing in money, then they have to do that one thing on the back burner while they're still doing the thing they got to earn a living for. Yes, it is challenging. It is complicated. There is a range of which some writers run Kickstarters specifically to fund paying their artists. Some writers will save up money to pay a page rate for their artists. So in which case you are both writer and publisher. And even if you're giving the artist some intellectual property or some percentage of ownership, maybe they'll work for a lower page rate if they're owning part of the creation. And then if you sell it to TV or if it becomes a video game, they may have worked for a lower page rate, but they're going to have some ownership in that. They're going to profit from that, to some degree. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me see if there's any last couple of comments in here. So I see a few more people popped in. Let's see here. Cassiel also said, in terms of other artists, he said ones that look really look like Moebius is William Stout and Jeff Darrow. Yes. William Stout's a guy who I've seen his artwork before. I don't own any Stout art books, but I've definitely seen his work and familiar with it, and he is awesome. Yadi says that was awesome. Can't wait for next Sunday. I look forward to it too. I enjoy putting these out there. Yadi says the Discord channel where people share artworks. Yes, we have for the Patreon, we have a Patreon exclusive Discord server. And on that, usually, we'll just share some work throughout the weeks. Beyond me doing my personal artwork, like I said, I do a lot of stuff where I'm taking a figure drawing class, and I share a lot of these studies I do in class on that Patreon. So that's kind of the main thing I show when I'm not showing any actual comic book work or any other illustration. So I share a lot more process work on there. Let's see here. Oh, another person, Setsuko, Aaliyah in the chat. Thank you for popping in, Setsuko. Said, I found I'm obsessed with seeing myself get better and better. It's also therapeutic. At first it was frustrating, and I have those days still. I'm also deciding whether I should stream my process on Twitch or not. It might be too distracting for me. I will tell you that, oh, by the way, before I go back to that, Elaine did say some great tips, thanks. I will tell you that if you do a search on the search bar on my channel for collaborators, I do have an interview I did with a friend of mine, Jamie Gamble, because people had asked me, where do art writers go to find artists? And that conversation, we don't necessarily get too much into the financial side in terms of the funding of the books and compensating artists, but it's an interesting conversation that's kind of a starting point for maybe what you're looking for. So check that out and see if that hopefully has some more additional information. Setsuko, in terms of the streaming and whether that might be distracting, I will tell you that it can be distracting. Me learning to be able to draw while I'm talking, it took time to develop that. Part of that was going to conventions and talking to people while I was sketching. But originally, the way I started was, first off, you can live stream and let people know at the start of the stream, I'll read your comments at the end. Like I'll read the comments, but I'm not going to be responding while I'm drawing. The way that I'm doing it, where I stopped drawing and I'm just talking to you guys. But in the earlier parts, I'm drawing and talking. You don't have to do that. There are people who just stream their process and they draw, and maybe they read the comments later just for their own personal benefit. And maybe they might address one or two things at the end of the live stream. So you can just work and have your process visually shown to people, but you're not interacting with them. The other option you can do is you can record yourself drawing and then just play either the recording, or you can play a time lapse. It's another thing. You can record yourself and then play the recording and be on that stream on Twitch responding to people watching your recording, and just tell them this is a recording and now I can talk to you. So there's lots of things you can do. You can post a time lapse, which is what for many years I just played time lapses on YouTube, and I did a narration on them afterwards. You can play time lapses. You can draw without interacting with people. You can play the recording and interact with people while the recording is playing. So those are a couple of options right there to maybe ease yourself into feeling comfortable. Because even with this, as you've seen, I got to the point where we were talking about deeper conversations and I couldn't draw and talk at the same time. So that's normal. Don't feel like you have to be like this amazing person who can do all this multitasking. Even me, for as many years as I've been doing this, I still obviously get distracted at points where I have to stop drawing. So hopefully that's helpful, and that encourages you to maybe give it a try, and in a way that doesn't feel like there's so much pressure on you while you're drawing. Okay, 1 hour of me drawing, 1 hour of just us talking. But it was great. It was fun. I've had tons of fun with you guys. I appreciate you guys showing up every week. I don't say this enough. Hit the like button. If there's other friends, share the video, share it on Twitter or whatever social media you guys are on. If there's friends you think that enjoy this kind of conversation, please share that with them. I don't necessarily make as much of a push to grow my channel as I probably should. So yeah, it helps me a lot. If you guys find other people and you think that some of my videos have something that you're like, oh, they're struggling with this issue, or they might find this thing interesting, then forward it to a friend. Help them, hopefully things will will grow and spread, and we'll see where things. Who knows how great this can be? I'm just happy to spend time hanging out with you guys and talking about art and sharing this. I think for all of us, making art can feel lonely. So I want you guys to understand that you guys are giving me a gift. That thing of you sometimes, making art is a very lonely process. And it's not just that I'm a voice here talking to you guys and keeping you company while you're making stuff. You guys are keeping me company while I'm making stuff. We're doing this together. So you guys are giving me a gift, and I greatly appreciate it. So and being able to spread that gift and connecting with more people, that's great. I look forward to that. So all right, guys, we've gone super long, but it's been super fun. That's it for now. Go be creative.